U.S. Open, and David Brewer joins us. How's the tournament going for you so far?
We're having a terrific week so far, Mary, so thanks for asking. It's been a lot of fun.
Tell me about this heat policy, the heat rule that happened in men's tennis. I'd never seen that, or at least not for a while, that after the third set, you guys took a look at the weather and said, all right, take 10 minutes.
It was. The weather was pretty extreme the last few days, obviously, between the heat and humidity. The women have had a heat rule that we've implemented on their behalf for a number of years. We just felt it was the appropriate thing to do for the guys as well. It was rough out there the last couple of days.
Yeah, everybody felt it. Even Novak Djokovic. I mean, you saw them using any method to stay cool. But right. I got to tell you, as a woman, I'm very happy that you're giving the men a break the way the women have had that 10-minute rule after the second set for all these years. It's about time. Is it going to be something you're just going to keep in place now?
Well, we will definitely keep it in place for the remainder of the tournament. We'll assess at that point, and we'll spend some time with both tours to determine what we need to do on a more formal, permanent basis next year.
Has there been any thought about when it gets to the point where it's that hot and that humid, and you know, and some players have said that it's almost dangerous. I'm not sure that I agree necessarily with that extreme of a statement. Is there a consideration that something that happens at like Washington, D.C., or even in Australia now when they get into hot conditions, they suspend play across the courts and then they come back when it drops in temperature? So basically, let's say we could have matches not starting until even 4 or 5 o'clock at night across the grounds. Is that something that you look at in Australia and consider for the U.S. Open?
We did take that into consideration, and we did have that conversation about, is there a threshold where we need to bring the players off the court? After a lot of consultation with our medical group and with some outside consultants as well, we determined that we weren't at that point yet. But again, we did have that conversation, and that'll be part of looking toward 2019 as well.
How many of the top seeds are asking you for night matches?
A few.
Translation, all of them. I'm asking for
more
a night
than
match,
somewhat. Is that fair to say?
More than somewhat.
So how do you decide? I mean, obviously, you're going to surely you're going to put Venus and Serena on the night match on Ash. Hello.
You sure? We'll announce that around lunchtime today. Okay.
I think we've already announced it. but no, obviously Novak Djokovic gets a night match, and after what happened to him in the last round, surely he went to you and said, "Yo, bro."
As Jim said, the vast majority of players over the last couple of days were looking for something in the shade. We get that. But, you know, that scheduling is a whole secret sauce. There are any number of factors that go into it. And at the end of the day, these are incredibly well-conditioned athletes. And they find a way to tough it out regardless of when and where they play.
Speaking of secret sauce, in the past few years, this championship has played fairly quick. The courts have been pretty fast. This year, when we got here, a lot of the players during the practice week were commenting that it seems like it's slower, that the ball's bouncing a little higher. And I found out through some of your colleagues at the USTA that there's been a change, that it's no longer asphalt as a base, it's cement underneath. What was that decision about, and how has it impacted how the courts were laid, if at all?
Great question, Jim. It's our courts are now post-tension concrete. Just gives us more longevity in the courts themselves and a little bit more standard playability across all courts. Intentionally, the courts are playing just a touch slower this year.
So that was intentional?
It was.
Okay.
Why did you want to do that?
We just felt that based on a lot of feedback we'd been getting from coaches and players that we had reached a threshold where we were getting just a little bit too quick. We felt from a fairness point of view, we wanted to bring it down a touch, not much. And most importantly, though, we are real comfortable with the fact that this year the courts are all playing just about the same, regardless of where you go, from Ash to the other field courts to the practice courts.
And how do you measure that, just for the fans at home? How do you measure that?
We actually have two different types of machinery that we test through the late summer and through the tournament itself. It's actually a ball cannon that goes out and then has a number of measurements there. So if you want to go out with the scientists one day, let me know. We'll let you go out there.
I've seen it at Davis Cup. I'm aware of it.
Yeah.
Yes, you have.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
What about the improvements that we've seen on television? We're getting this bird's eye view of the player warm-up areas as well, which is really fascinating to see how the players get ready post and pre-match. I mean, what was that initiative all about?
Well, we know that fans at home, as you can see there, fans at home want to see what's going on behind the scenes. They want to know what players do before they go play. They want to know what players do after they play a match. And for the most part, the players are much more cooperative and much more easygoing about it than you were in your playing days.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I also have to tell you, Dave, the viewing audience is very happy that you changed the camera angle over on the new Louis Armstrong. And what a difference. How were you able to pull that off like overnight?
Well, that's, listen, we've got an incredible staff that works here at the National Tennis Center year-round, led by Danny Zausner, our COO. And when Danny says we're going to get something done, it gets done. And it usually gets done right when he says it's going to get done. The camera change was one of those effects that he pulled off.
That's amazing, because you had to rip out, what, 16 seats to make room for the better camera angle.
Correct. We had to do some seat kills, but again, in the greater scheme of things, we think it's worth it.
When you talk about the player and the coaching input on the surface here, is there other areas that you're taking input from them, from the food to the new facilities for them? How does that work as a tournament director for you?
Well, we call it quality of life issues for the players, okay? And as well as anybody, it comes down to the basics. Transportation, food, locker rooms, practice, okay? And then schedule after that. So we know what we've got to hit, and each year we really work hard in the off season to address those things. We're limited by space. We're not going to get any larger in terms of square footage with the park for what we have, so we have to retrofit on an annual basis, and we're doing that.
No kidding. There was a moment during the Andy Murray-Fernando Verdasco match after the third set, after the 10-minute break, where Andy Murray certainly thought that Fernando Verdasco was getting coached, which is not supposed to be allowed to happen with this new third set 10-minute break rule. Verdasco denied it all. Right. Andy Murray disagreed with the denials. How quickly were you able to tell these players what the new rules were? Did you email it to them? Did you post it around the locker room? How did they get the news? Because Andy felt like he knew the rules well, and that Fernando either didn't know the rule or didn't abide by the rules.
Well, without getting into the middle of he said, in terms of how we communicated to the players, as soon as we determined we were going to provide the men with the break, immediately, notices went up into the locker room. The ATP Tour supervisors were in the locker room speaking with players and coaches immediately. We've got a couple of other communications platforms that we use with the players, between the emails, tweets, but also a number of video boards that we have in the locker room, so we can put something up immediately, and that's what we did.
It's interesting because if it had been a rain delay, players are allowed to talk to their coach.
Yeah.
So that was a judgment call on your part.
But again, it was based on what the rule is for the women. We felt that non-coaching rule that has been in place for the women, it felt like it needed to be there for the men as well. So we're looking for consistency on that.
I love hearing that. This place is terrific. Congratulations.
We love having you guys here. You know that.
All right.
You still know how to lie right to my face. That's so good.
Okay,
It's amazing.
most people we love having.